here to cover all things crime, history, and politics. We are At the Desk. I'm your host, Lauren Perry, and in today's episode, we will be talking about the North Carolina Lieutenant Governor and Penn State shutdown on the Collegian, the second assassination attempt on former President Trump, Charlie Kirk's brief appearance at Penn State's student opinions on the most recent presidential debate, and playing a fun game of two lies and a truth. Now, come take a seat with us at the desk. Welcome back to ATD. First, it's time to send it over to our politics panel to discuss the North Carolina governor and Penn State's temporary shutdown of the Collegian. Over to you, Ryan.
Tonight on the politics panel, we dive into the troubling story of North Carolina Lieutenant Governor and Republican nominee for governor Mark Robinson's controversial comment history on a porn site. Robinson had until last Thursday to drop out of the race, in which he stated he's a black Nazi and a perv. Also tonight, we hit home here in State College as Penn State University's University Park campus removes the student-run newspaper, The Daily Collegian, from campus locations for violating university policy on political statements via an advertisement from the Harris Walls campaign. All that right here on At the Desk. So Jordan, would you like to share your opinions on the current situation with the Daily Collegian? That I believe they're back on campus, but however, this was a momentous occasion for both the university and the newspaper.
Yeah, absolutely. So they're framing this as a free speech issue. However, in their article that they wrote about the reasons why they removed it from campus, they had ad 27, commercial sales activities at university locations, ad 02, non-university groups using university facilities, and what really got them was ad 92, political campaign activities, because the school is very big on promoting free speech, and in this policy it states they are committed to the principles of free expression, including the exchange of political viewpoints and ideas. However, if you read a little further down, it says it is the university's policy that it and its employees and representatives, when acting in their official capacities for the university, may not directly or indirectly participate in or intervene in any political campaigns. So that's what got them hung up, because for those who might not know, the Collegian was running a Harris Walls ad. They aren't endorsing either candidate, but it was a paid advertisement, and the university said that's against their policies. However, just the way that this whole thing went down and it happened, it kind of makes you ask the question why. The fact that they did this in the middle of the night, the fact that there wasn't a lot of notification of, hey, we're going to do this. There was an off-the-records conversation, but nothing really solidified. That's the part that makes this a little bit concerning of, hey, let's have a conversation about a policy that might not be aligning, not in the middle of the night hold a sting operation to take away all the newspapers.
It was interesting, and I like to make this analogy to you because you're a big sports fan, Jackson. It was almost like how the Cleveland Browns turned into the Baltimore Ravens overnight.
Yeah, almost. Yeah, so it was very interesting to me. So when I first found out about it, I didn't know much. I thought that it was a direct violation of free speech by Penn State, but I looked into it more and I found out they did violate some of the policies. So obviously there's a difference between a paid advertisement, say if they just posted a pro-Kamala article or a pro-Trump article. I mean, this is obviously, the Harris campaign did pay them to put this in there. Yes. So I do completely understand why they took this out. But the funny thing is this happened the day after the Charlie Kirk event was called off over a supposed rule that happened on Hub Lawn, which again, it was an official Penn State University rule. You can't have speakers on the Hub Lawn, before 5 p.m. But a lot of people view that as a thing against free speech a violation of free speech, yes, because it was a conservative event and it was shut down without even happening.
It seems like it's these nitty-gritty policies, and you got to read the fine print, and that's what's causing.
It's a lot of technicalities, and I feel like I've heard speakers are being used on the Hub Lawn before 5 p.m. before. This is the first I've ever heard of this, but it is a policy that is written down, so I can't argue with it.
I think the main thing about what we're talking about is that this all happened so close to one another. You mentioned the Charlie Kirk thing was right before all this stuff happened, and when we think about Penn State as a university, I think, of course, our students here, the majority may lean more liberal over conservative, but the whole goal of this university should be in the middle, right? We should be taking care of things, even if it's written down in rules on the hub lawn, or if the Collegian's having issues with an advertisement. But one thing I did want to note about the Collegian was they had that paid advertisement by that campaign. From my knowledge, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, if that was the Donald Trump campaign, they still would have put the advertisement on it too. So it goes both ways, correct?
Yes.
Same for the hub lawn. If
Right.
the hub lawn had of course, because it was written in the document, if the hub lawn had another speaker that wasn't Charlie Kirk, but I don't know, someone else, that would still be into play. So I think that's where the university itself comes into violations and all that nitty-gritty stuff about ruling, but also where we stand, from policy to policy and from human to human on our biases and what we think and what we believe in.
Yeah, talking about the Collegian, for lack of a more professional term, it just seems shady
Yes.
to, like Jordan said, conduct a sting operation to remove the
Seems
Collegian.
very unofficial.
Exactly, because for me, we talk about free speech, but another thing in the First Amendment is also free press. All of us sitting here have
Right.
aspirations to become journalists, and in a time where the media has received so many attacks for being unfair, for being biased, for being slanted, some of which are valid criticisms, I believe.
Yeah.
But in a time where all that criticism is coming towards the media and print media is also dying, to do something like this in such a undercover, clandestine way just seems is kind of very hurtful. And I can understand, like, for people who actually work at the Collegian, like, I imagine that's really hurtful and really upsetting to them because, like you said, Jordan, why wasn't there an official conversation had? There are just so many ways that the university could have gone about in a more professional and more thoughtful manner.
An official statement would have been appreciated.
Yes,
And
I think the whole
Because
thing was very, very
I,
abrupt.
yep.
Yes.
And when I said that, everyone just wanted to speak. That is the truth, is that everybody wanted an official statement from the university and an organized manner in which this whole situation would have been resolved. We didn't see that.
Well, and the
Of course,
general
yep.
manager said it best. What were they hoping to accomplish by doing it this way? And I think that's a great point.
And if
Because
it
not
wasn't
one
for the
of them
media,
unnoticed.
but if it wasn't for the media and the Collegian writing an article and posting about it, would have had gotten the
Recognition.
publicity about? Maybe not. But I think it was the students that heard about the story and then were like, wait, this doesn't seem right. Wait, this isn't effective or efficient, let alone the Daily Collegian now looks like they just got swept under the rug. So I think it was also a big impact was the social media push on the article about what happened to the Daily Collegian with the
Yeah.
newspapers. And then it allows for people to investigate a little more on their own behalf. What actually
to
happened?
advocate.
It
Yeah.
just kind of feels like a slap in the face. I don't even work at the Collegian, but it feels like a slap in the face as somebody who works in the media, in journalism, because it's kind of like we don't respect you and your work enough to do this type of stuff in broad daylight, to tell you, hey, we're going to remove your physical papers from campus because you did this. There's a certain amount of respect that you have to have for an organization to inform them that you're going to do something that they may not like, and doing it. I'm thinking of the French term. I'm trying to translate it in English, and doing this like without their knowledge, just shows that there's a lack of respect there.
They did it unapologetically.
Unapologetic.
That's what I
Exactly.
think bothered a lot of people, is they did it unapologetically. And when you're like an elected official or you're an organization and you're removing someone from their position, there's a due process, or at least there's some sort of organized manner in which it is done. Moment's notice, whatever you want to call it. We didn't see that. We just saw an overnight removal, just like, as I mentioned, a franchise leaving their stadium and moving out of the city.
It's almost like an Italian mafia thing. It's like a
It's-
sudden just move against like just removing stuff.
It wasn't a great situation. Campus politics are interesting though, because the Supreme Court only does so much when it comes to school districts and when it comes to universities. There's not really a fine, bright line there, unfortunately.
And we have to remember the Daily Collegian is not directly.
It's independent from the university. However, they are using university facilities. So that's that caveat there.
Which
Yeah.
brings in the AD policies. of
Yes.
course.
There's a gray area there that's hard to navigate.
Well, we have to move on to another conversation regarding speech. We have to move on to Mark Robinson, current Lieutenant Governor of North Carolina, looking to be governor, not looking good for him. However, not for the reason that we think, which is him losing in the polls, but because of something that caused him to be down this badly in the polls. Some statements that he made on a porn site. So I've already mentioned them in the intro. You can rewind if you want to hear it. I'd rather not say it again, but what he said, Francie, was not good.
No, and you know what? this only puts a highlight on, first of all, his running and its effect on the Trump campaign. I read a lot about how these kind of governors, all this kind of stuff, doesn't actually have an impact on the presidential
The
campaign.
main ticket now.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
Historically, you go down and you see history and things that happened in the past. It doesn't. But is this still a red flag for North Carolina? Yes. Is this still a big deal? Yes. Is this still not okay? Yes. And then it kind of reminds me of, kind of what has happened with Trump as well through his timeline. When he was in presidency, when he was former, now there's been a lot of dirt that's been brought up about him as well. And I think what's interesting is that it goes all around, right? So the media has become a place of, I don't know how to say this in
There's
the
no
right way.
editors anymore. There's no editors anymore.
There's an influxation of bringing things from the past, and as it should be in some cases. Like, this is very disgusting, right? But it just makes me think of where are we headed in the media with this kind of outreach? If that makes sense, am I wording this correctly
Well,
for you
yeah,
guys?
I did hear something interesting. Is that somebody mentioned to me on the phone, what has our world come to? There is a theory out there, and actually it's quite backed up, that people have always been acting like this. People have always done foolish things behind the scenes. Power-hungry people have always said, for lack of a better term, dumb things.
Yes.
And the truth is now, with all the technology we have and all the investigations we have from the other side of the aisle, like the left is always investigating the right is always, we saw it with Watergate, we saw it with Bill Clinton, whatever you want to use. The fact of the matter is that when you're running for public office, you can't escape anything you said. And we're seeing that right now. And he has to take responsibility for what he said, and he's going to have
What's
to take
out there
punishment
is
for
always
it.
out there.
Right, absolutely. That's number one. But number two, and this is what's really interesting to me, is that regardless of your opinion of the whole thing, there's only one news source to date that has confirmed this. It's CNN. NBC, who has sided with CNN in a lot of matters, has not confirmed it. So Lindsey Graham said on Meet the Press, if CNN made this up or somehow mixed something up, or this was AI generated, like Mark Robinson claimed, he has a humongous defamation lawsuit on his hands that he can make a fortune off of. So
Yeah.
that's the shadiest part of the whole thing. And that's what people don't talk about, is only CNN has found this information credible. And mentioned by Republicans who have been sticking behind him is that only CNN has mentioned it. Why have we not seen other confirmations?
Right. Do you think it's more feasible? Like, do you think that he actually would go through with something like that if this was the case? This is also kind of testing
know.
his
Yeah.
in actuality if it is him or not, right?
I'm just respecting the fact that there is such thing as a due process.
Well, and I think the
course.
learning lesson from this, though, is kind of like you guys were saying, when it's out there, it's out there.
Right.
And whenever you are in the public sphere, you have to be so careful about what you're putting out there, what you're saying, because a lot of the things that he said in those comment sections was very distasteful, very disgusting, and when you're trying to run for public office,
Absolutely.
it's not a good look for you. It's also very contradictory to he said these things before, which directly go against what he's saying now. And I think the learning lesson here is that when you are going to be in the limelight, you better be very careful about what you say. I mean, even here now, I think about making sure that I am aware of how I'm behaving, how I'm acting, knowing that there's someone always around with a video camera that could
Right.
record anything you're saying, because it'll come back to bite you in 10 years down the line. And these politicians, they need to be aware of that, and they need to be more careful to
course.
not do things that are distasteful.
Yes, and it's really interesting because the type of pornography that he watched was transgender pornography in some of these
Right.
cases, and he is obviously a very socially conservative politician, which contradicts his own values.
Right.
So this would be a very, very strange look for his campaign if this was confirmed to be true. But I'd like to comment on what you said. CNN is actually not the most liberal news source now, so it would be interesting if they were the ones to try to defame him. I would think it would be ABC at this point.
But they know what they're
But-
getting into too. They wouldn't just put
It's
something
not
out there
yet-
without.
Right.
Yeah, can
They-
I want to speak to
it's a
something
two-way
that
street.
Jackson said regarding the type of adult film that he was
Yes.
watching. And I think it's very interesting. It seems like there's a trend of, and this is both like on the left and on the right, of people running for office and running on grounds or on like themes of being socially liberal, socially conservative, yada yada, and then behind closed doors being different and having diametrically opposed views to that. But to that point, talking about people coming and digging up stuff from the ground, like from maybe 10 years ago to now present, like when you're running for office, I'm wondering where we draw the line between politicians being public figures and being private people,
Right.
because obviously he's in the public sphere, he's running on being socially conservative, on having good Christian values, and then watching the type of porn that he was watching, that kind of seems like it's a pose, right? But what gives us the right to judge him for that if he was running on like a different platform?
It's because he's now a public figure. But it's now he's a public figure and he's putting himself in the limelight. He should know that these kind of things will get dug up and they will be used against you because that's the position you're now taking. This is actually in law. If you learn about it in all that, I learned it over in
the public figure versus private person,
Yes.
right?
Right.
That whole
Well, and I also think a big part to that too, though, is that you want to know what your politicians stand for. And a lot of the time when people are running, you see them telling you what you want to hear, saying what their voters want to know and the policies that they want to see. But I think part of digging up these pasts and digging up things that they've said before helps show the voters who is this person really. Because I can sit here till I'm blue in the face and tell you exactly what you want to hear, but that doesn't mean that's the kind of person that I am. And once you're into office, you're going to start to become the person that you are, not the facade that you put on in your campaign.
Right. We're running out of time here, but I just want to ask you guys. Sorry, Ryan, I'm kind of stepping.
Please
on
go
your
ahead.
toes
I
right
love
now.
questions.
But
I'm a
given
fan of
the
this by
fact
heart.
that Trump has not come out yet to
Pull his
condemn
endorsement.
or pull his endorsement of him, speaks volumes. I mean, we all know that Trump's word carries a lot of weight in the Republican Party. So do you guys think that'll help his chances? Because as of September 21st, Robinson is polling 37%. That is from 42% in September 18th. So that's like a 3-day jump in five percentage points that he's already dropped down.
He's 10 points behind today.
So today, right? Like that's crazy.
He's running a very, very poor campaign
So
right
do you
now.
guys think that Trump's continued endorsement of him will help him change anything?
Well,
or do you
I'll
think
say
he's
Trump
gonna
is going to do.
Okay.
Trump is going to do the same thing he always does. Chris Christie said this. He's going to say he never knew the guy, and he's going to say that he didn't know much about him, but he was on the Republican ticket, and that the
Yes.
guy begged him to win. We've heard the same thing with Ron DeSantis. We've heard the same thing with George Santos.
Yeah.
He doesn't know the guy unless the guy is successful, and then when he knows the guy, all of a sudden they're best friends and they're partners. But what's so funny is Donald Trump has called him Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. on steroids, and times 10. Wow.
Dr.
Well,
Martin Luther King
Donald
never
Trump
called
loves to say
himself a black
crazy stuff.
Nazi.
We know this. But here's the thing: this is politics, and he has to kind of ally with his Republican allies. I said ally twice.
Yeah,
but yes.
it can be done a little
Yes.
bit more.
But yes, I
logically.
think that if it is confirmed that he did say these things on these websites, the I'm a black Nazi and the transgender pornography, all this kind of stuff, then I do think that Trump should pull back the endorsement and say, hey, this is not acceptable. Because Trump and Robinson are ideologically very different. Trump is actually closer to the middle than this guy is. So I do think that it would be a good idea for Trump to pull it if this stuff is confirmed.
Yeah.
Well, that's all the time that we have. The Daily Collegian is back on campus for all to read, and Mark Robinson is set to take on North Carolina State Attorney General Josh Stein on November 5th for governor of the Tar Heel State. Back to you, Lauren.
Thanks, Ryan. Stay tuned for a special package on Charlie Kirk and his brief appearance on Penn State's Hub Lawn last Thursday. We will be right back at the desk.
You're being brainwashed. That's the message Charlie Kirk brought to Penn State's Hub Lawn on September 19th as part of his Turning Point USA tour. More than 500 people gathered to listen to the conservative commentator, while a couple dozen of protesters voiced their opposition. Turning Point USA is known for promoting conservative values on college campuses, often sparking controversy with their outspoken stances on issues like free speech, education, and social justice.
The reason that we are in the political climate that we are in, where there is so much political division within Gen Z, is because people are not willing to have conversations with the other side. And I myself, doing social media content for Turning Point USA and speaking on behalf of them, am very open and welcome to debating and just having public discourse with opposing sides.
But not everyone welcomed him. The Student Committee for Defense and Solidarity organized a protest. Their main concerns? Kirk's history of comments they say harm marginalized communities. Signs and chants expressed frustration over the group, arguing that hate speech has no place on campus.
Charlie Kirk and Turning Point USA are here today on campus showing their cause and conservatives' beliefs, and we have Penn State students here that are showing out, showing two different sides of the story.
By coming here and me seeing this in the presidential elect, I feel like it's a very good thing for everyone to just have an open mind, hear it, because both candidates have valid points. It just comes down to the point of who's going to make this country better for all of us.
The event, however, wasn't just about the speech from Charlie Kirk. Red MAGA hats were being handed out, and Kirk even took time to sign some of them along with a few chicken sandwiches. Yes, you heard that right, chicken sandwiches. There was also a voter registration booth set up, encouraging students to register and make their voices heard in the upcoming election. Kirk and Turning Point USA made it clear they're firmly behind Donald Trump as the 2024 election approaches, and they were there to get students involved and motivated.
Turning Point USA, we're the largest grassroots student organization in the country that is actually giving voices back to students and telling them, hey, you're not alone. You don't need to fear to cancel culture on campus, and there's like-minded conservatives all the way around you, even in the state of Pennsylvania.
The voter registration booth, the hats, and even the signed chicken sandwiches all point to one thing: the 2024 election is top of mind. For Turning Point USA, this tour is about rallying support for Trump, but for many students, it's about navigating the fine line between free speech and protecting their campus community. It's clear that the conversation about free speech and political advocacy isn't going away anytime soon, especially as the 2024 election draws near. Penn State continues to be a key battleground in this national debate. Reporting in University Park, I'm Evan Halfin. Back to you in the studio.
We are once again back at the desk. Let's send it over to the crime panel to discuss the second assassination attempt on President Donald Trump, just weeks after the July 13th incident. Over to you, Sam.
Thank you, Lauren. Last week, we covered the July assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump. Just before our episode, news broke that there was another assassination attempt on September 15th. This attempt occurred at Trump International Golf Course in West Palm Beach, Florida. The suspect, Ryan Wellesley Ruth, was detained after rifles were found on his person and in his car. He stated that he was aiming to kill the former president. Donald Trump was rushed to safety and was not harmed during the incident. This week, we will be continuing to cover what exactly happened on that day and how law enforcement responds to such events like these leading up to the upcoming election. So we'll start with you, Sophia, talking about the gunman's background.
So Ryan grew up in North Carolina and attended the North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University. He currently lives in Hawaii, where he owns a small construction company. Public records and interviews with those who know him show that Mr. Ruth saw himself as an active participant in both local and global events. For example, in 1991, he chased and fought a suspected rapist in his neighborhood. This earned him the Law Enforcement Oscar from the Greensboro chapter of the International Union of Police Association. However, more than 100 criminal counts have been filed against Ryan in North Carolina for various reasons. And in December 2002, he was convicted of a felony for possessing a weapon of mass death and destruction. This was a result of him barricading himself into a building with an automatic machine gun. Throughout the years, he was also charged with possession of stolen goods, carrying a concealed weapon, and a hit-and-run offense. As far as his political affiliation, records show that he was registered as an unaffiliated voter in 2012. On Twitter, Ryan claimed that he was a Trump supporter in 2016, but turned against him by the 2020 election. He most recently voted Democratic in the 2024 March primary election. Records also show that he has donated more than $100 to a Democratic organization called Act Blue. Ryan is especially outspoken and passionate about the war in Ukraine. He wrote and self-published a book titled Ukraine's Unwinnable War, where he claimed that Trump's withdrawal from the Iran nuclear deal in 2018 led to mass destruction. In 2022, he actually traveled to Ukraine to help the country fight against Russia, but was denied due to not having prior war experience. He then tried to enlist Afghan soldiers overseas to fight in the war instead, and rallied people to help support Ukraine through various human aid organizations.
Yeah, pretty much sums it up.
Yeah. This had been long planned. That's what's really interesting about this whole deal here, is that he actually wrote in his self-published book that you mentioned that he planned this, that he said it was okay for Iran to assassinate President Trump. And the fact that he went through this, had this whole meticulous idea of, okay, I'm going to stake out this golf course, I'm going to look up all his different places that he's going to be, and then I'm going to look up how to get to Mexico, and all these different things. It seemed like he had a really well put together plan, but it fell apart in a matter of seconds. And it's this, like I said, this odd dichotomy between a meticulous list and then just it completely fell apart. He ran out of this, he ran out of this attempt in a matter of seconds, and he had a letter that he penned to himself or to the world, as he said it, where, okay, this was my attempt and it failed. So he kind of knew that his plan was bad, but he still had a plan. It just was very strange how it was planned out, but failed so spectacularly in a matter of seconds.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, and it really gets you thinking, he kind of knew this was going to fail. he put so much thought into it, but was he doing it for kind of other motives? I mean, it was so soon after the other attempt in July. Did that give him ideas? Did that give him ammunition? Was he just kind of, like, I want to create like a terrorist attack on these people. I want to make a commotion. I mean, as you mentioned before, he's a big supporter of Ukraine. He's very passionate about what he's involved in. So was he just doing this to make a statement, to make a big act, to make the news talk about it? And I feel like there's a lot of different avenues you can go down that. But I kind of want to talk about the Secret Service because, that was a big thing we talked about last week in relation to the July 13th attempt. So I kind of want to talk about how they handled it in comparison to last time. So they were really on it this time. Secret Service agents removed Trump from golf course in under 20 seconds. And an agent saw the firearm rifle almost immediately and discharged it. So no shots were actually had on Trump, and they kind of just tackled him right away. A friend who was actually golfing with Trump actually said he praised the Secret Service for how fast their response time was. So it's really a big kind of difference from the last time. Maybe they were more prepared. They were kind of better ready for this situation. Something I do think is pretty interesting, though, is Ronald Rowe, who is actually the director of the Secret Service. He said they're really trying to kind of go from a reactive model to a more readiness model, kind of showing how, like, when something does happen, they react to it and they do the best they can, but they kind of want to, start to kind of work on more of a model or plan that, kind of maybe stops any of this from happening in the first place and just kind of gets them better prepared. Because I mean, I think with Trump, he is such a big target in the public eye. It's even stated that he has the same level of protection as the President of the United States, just because he is such a big target to so many people. And I think, the Secret Service knows that, and I think because of these last two assassination attempts, they're really trying to step up their game and really make some improvements in that area because, I mean, as we know, he's a crazy intense target.
Yeah, I was appalled. Like, I know I covered this last week, but I was appalled at how the Secret Service responded to the first attempt. So I'm glad that it was at least a little bit better. But I also want to note, the first attempt, everyone saw how that ended. The assassin this time even saw how it ended, and he still wanted to assassinate the president. That's what's crazy to me is this just happened. The Secret Service took out the guy that did it. You saw the world's response. So this guy still wanted to do it.
I find it interesting something you went back to earlier, where was this something just the guy to make a scene?
Right.
Just to make a show? Because like I had mentioned, it was sort of poorly organized. And I like how you said how the Secret Service did a much better job, but it was still sort of this odd response. And I like what you mentioned, how you said readiness model versus reactionary model, because I think that's a really important thing for the Secret Service, which I'm sure you can speak to, where they want to essentially have prevention versus working into a reactive mode of, oh my God, something's happening quick, I have to get onto it, et cetera, et cetera. If they can work more on prevention and having a perimeter set up, or just identifying issues quicker, I think that's an important step that was taken here. And was better, but still not as good as it should be.
Right, and I want to, the point of law enforcement is to prevent crime. That's what it is. So them moving to a more prevention model makes sense because they don't want the crime to happen in the first place. You don't want anyone to get murdered in the first place. You want to prevent any of that from happening. That's why we have prisons. That's why we have all of the formal places for these people to go.
Right, because I would not be surprised if another person would attempt this. Like, I would not be surprised at all. I mean, this has happened for years upon years with different presidents, and so these two assassination attempts so close to each other, I would not even be surprised if in another month he's at another rally. He plans on coming back to Butler, PA, I know. Like, I would not be surprised if we see this on the news yet again. And it's crazy to me because that's how our society works. And I know I mentioned this last episode about like the violence in this country and how people do things, but also to kind of bring it back to your point, it's just kind of interesting of like, he made this plan, but it always makes you wonder, like, did he actually think he was gonna succeed? Like, did part of him know, like, this probably isn't gonna work? Like, I have other visions in mind. I just kind of want my name out there. I want to show I'm an activist against him. Or did he seriously, part of his brain think, this might work? Like, this might happen. I might get away with it. But it's just very interesting because, he did really think it out, but he wasn't super proactive with it. He was just kind of sitting around in the bushes for hours on end. I know he was waiting for the right time to kind of cue it up, but it was just very interesting. It feels very like slow at the same time as much as it was like really planned out. And of course, the law enforcement did catch him in a neighboring county and, questioned him. So it was all dealt with pretty nicely. But It's just insane.
I think it's also important to note that although the Secret Service did catch him and identify him in a timely manner, research shows that he was outside of the golf course for 12 hours before Trump was even starting to golf, and nobody caught him or saw him or anything like that. So I think that's another thing that's important to note, like, where was the Secret Service? Where was Trump's guards? Where was security before then? During those 12 hours, all of those records that are showing that he was there. So I think that's also something important to note. How could that have been caught beforehand?
And I think that, like she had said, he was outside for 12 hours prior to this happening. And that sort of shows that he had an idea of what he wanted to do, but sort of maybe he was unsure how he was going to pull it off, or if he kind of circled the block, sort of going through his head, am I really sure that I want to go through with this? Am I really sure that I want this to be my plan here? Kind of this mental argument I was wondering if he was having with himself over the course of this 12 hours prior to him actually being set in position and ready to take the shot. What I also found very intriguing is that this guy took off in his SUV, I think it was a Nissan. He took on his SUV, and when the authorities approached him, he just pulled over.
Right.
Now, if you were someone who had just taken a shot at the former president of the United States, wouldn't you think that you would take off in high pursuit and make them chase you down, not just be like, all right, that's it, I'm done?
Right.
It just seemed, again, very odd.
Yeah, that's the thing. It just seems like a really odd situation, and that's why I kind of go back to the point where it's like I feel like he wanted to be known and kind of like make this statement, because I feel like people who just kind of want to do it and like flee or get out of there, like you said, he would be on the gas pedal out of the country. But you know, he just kind of seemed like it was just a very odd situation. Like it kind of almost seemed like, yeah, like this is me, like let's talk about it. Like it just seemed like they had no trouble kind of getting to him and grabbing him. So I don't know, like I could be totally wrong, that might not be true. I don't know what was going through his mind at the time, but it just seemed like something where he wanted to make a statement or kind of piggyback off of, you know, the assassination attempt in July. Maybe that got his ideas flowing. I really don't know. But it's just funny, the sequence of events, like a coincidence.
Well, that is all the time we have for today. As election time inches closer and closer, we will continue to see crimes surrounding the political candidates. As a society, we just have to remember, no matter what political views you have, nothing is worth taking someone's life over. Hopefully, this is the last assassination attempt we will have to cover. Tune in next week as we discuss all things 9/11. Back to you, Lauren.
Thanks, Sam. Coming up is an interview with Penn State students and their thoughts on the previous presidential debate.
Over the past few days, we went around campus and asked multiple students their opinions on the Trump-Harris debate. Here's what they had to say. What were your opinions on the Harris-Trump debate?
I don't know. I didn't really watch it that close.
It was actually pretty interesting to watch, honestly. I thought that both candidates, they went at each other a lot. It was definitely heated.
I think it was a mess. I don't think either side, looking great. I think overall, I think Trump did a little better, not by much.
I was really happy with the outcome. I thought that the Vice President, Kamala Harris, did an excellent job articulating exactly what she wanted to, really going into detail about her plans, her opinions, her values.
I thought that Trump was attacking Kamala a little too much. Like, he was just going in on her for no reason.
And I also think it didn't go as well for former President Donald Trump. I think that he kind of stuck to his same old.
But he was kind of destroying her in the immigration aspect. Like, obviously, the last 4 years, it's been a problem, and she didn't address it.
And I just want to say, as a Haitian, we don't eat cats and we don't eat the dogs.
So who do you believe won the debate?
I think Trump did a little better, not by much.
I believe Kamala won the debate, but I'm still going for Trump.
I think Kamala Harris won the debate.
I don't think either of them won.
If it's not a draw and I have to pick, Kamala probably took it, just because she was just stronger throughout the entire debate. Like, less angry. Like, she really had the ball in her court, I'd say, for this one.
Personally, I would say Kamala, and for two main reasons. One, Trump got fact-checked a lot, so it made me, like, I'm not sure if I can trust his word too much. It's just giving, like, do you know what you're talking about?
And what's the topic that's most important to you in this election?
I think in this election specifically, the most important topic is women's rights and women's bodies' rights and abortion rights.
The economy. I'm graduating in the spring. I want to be able to buy a house, not be renting forever. And at this point, I'm not sure how realistic that is.
Abortion rights. Just me as a girl, especially in a college campus, things can happen.
Money.
Thanks.
Making money.
It has to be prices, because obviously last 4 years, Biden administration didn't do a great job. They're obviously, like, I'm paying way too much for eggs. I'm not even going to lie. Like, way too much.
We heard many different opinions over these past few days, but regardless of whose you agree with, it's important that you go out there on November 5th and vote. I'm Mariana Van Wiegen signing off.
We are back at the desk. Now it's time for the history panel as they play Two Lies and a Truth. Over to you, Audrey.
Thanks, Lauren. Presidents, old and new, generate a lot of publicity. I can't imagine why. But with that publicity comes myths and rumors. We on the history panel love a good story. So we did our best to find some really interesting stories about past presidents. But to throw off our fellow panelists, we also will present 2 fake stories or disproven myths to the others, and they will have to sniff out the true story. If they guess correctly, they'll get a point. The person with the most points at the end will be crowned ATD's human lie detector. And we will start with whoever's stories come up presenting their stories. So the first 3.
I'm ready.
Let's see.
I'm very ready. I'm very ready.
Let's get into this.
Give it to me.
Let's go.
All right, stories. Number 1, Lincoln was so pressed. Oh, these were mine, by the way. Lincoln was so pressed for time when writing the Gettysburg Address that he scribbled it out on the back of an envelope. 2, Zachary Taylor never voted in an election prior to when he was on the ballot. 3, Martin Van Buren's first language was German, not English. What do you guys think?
Can I go first?
Yeah.
Martin Van Buren is just, maybe I'm stereotyping, and I shouldn't do that as the DEI chair of PSN TV, but Martin Van Buren just screams German to me. Like, am I bugging for that?
No, I don't think
right?
so.
That's a very German name.
I think it's the van.
So I'm gonna go, it's the van,
Yeah,
right? So
it's the
I'm gonna
van.
go with number 3.
I think I'm going to go with he never voted in an election prior to when he was on the ballot. That's kind of weird to not be involved in politics at all and not use your United States citizen right to vote, which you should go vote.
Register. Guys,
Make
it's
sure you're
really
registered.
easy.
I think that's kind of weird. I'm going to go with 3.
I'm going to go with 2. I think it's so unbelievable that it just might be true. And the thing about Martin Van Buren, I'm pretty sure I heard somewhere, I could totally be wrong, feel free to fact check me, but I swear I could have read somewhere that he was Dutch.
Oh.
So I'm pretty sure, just based on that, I'm going to go with number 2. Zachary Taylor never voted in an election, just because that's so insane and it feels like a lie, which is why I think it might be true. It's Audrey trying to throw us off.
Because I have a feeling that Audrey is trying to throw us off here, I'm going to go with the one that I feel like, because I feel like the first one is almost like, it's the exact thing that would make so much sense, but I feel like it's also somewhat of like an urban legend maybe. So I'm going to go with 2, that Zachary Taylor one.
And have a nice even split.
All right, it was number 2. Zachary Taylor never voted in an election prior to when he was on the ballot. So he didn't vote prior to like 1948. Oop, sorry. I feel like that should have been 1848. Guys, my notes might be wrong. He also wasn't forthcoming about his politics or like political background prior to when he was running. And then like when he was running, people are like, okay, what is this guy for? And he was like, guys, I'm with the Whig Party, don't worry. And then the Whig Party was like,
Yeah, that's definitely 1884.
Sure. Yeah, Martin Van Buren is Dutch. You caught that one. And Lincoln, that is an urban legend. You can't really prove it. So that's also not true. But good job, guys.
Gettysburg Address is great. That's what I have to say about that. I wouldn't be surprised if he wrote it in a very short amount of time because he was such a genius. I'm a big Abraham Lincoln fan. If you guys couldn't tell, I wasn't sure.
Most people are.
All right.
All right, next slide. That's Zachary Taylor.
He was very handsome.
Very distinguished fellow.
He was very distinguished.
She said, well, I wouldn't go that far. All right, so these next 3. Whose are these really quick?
These are mine.
Okay.
All right.
Number 1, Andrew Jackson claimed to have psychic abilities and would communicate with the founding fathers for political advice. James Madison was his favorite. Number 2, Andrew Jackson had a pet parrot named Pole who was known for cursing. During Jackson's funeral, Pole began cursing so loudly that he had to be removed from the service. And number 3, Andrew Jackson attempted to train his horse, Jack, to vote in elections, declaring that Jack had the same level of wisdom as his political rivals. Oh my God. Jack died before he could formally vote in an election.
As somebody that also had Jackson as one of my presidents that I did something for, I have to say he was the weirdest person ever. Andrew Jackson was incredibly strange. With that being said, I feel like a parrot named Polly is just like way too good to pass up. So I'm going to go with a parrot named Paul.
I think I'm on the same boat just because like there's an itching at the back of my brain that tells me I've heard this story before. So I'm going to go with 2.
As much as I would love for the parrot to be correct, I have a feeling I'm such an Andrew Jackson hater. So
That's
I
so real.
totally think that that he's a wacko and that his horse was trying to vote. He's trying to get his horse to vote.
Oh, I would love for number 3 to be true, but I cannot logically believe that someone is that crazy to do that. But also, looking at this election.
Jackson was pretty crazy.
I
There
don't
you
know.
go.
So I'm going to go with number 1. That's the truth.
Okay.
Okay.
What do you got first, Shay?
So, the truth is Andrew Jackson had a pet parrot named Pole who was known for cursing.
2 for 2.
Yeah, during
Look at me
Jackson's
go.
funeral, Pole cursed so loud that he literally had to be like removed from the service. The other 2 are literally incorrect. I went with a pet one, so I was like, let me do another pet one for the horse. And then the psychic abilities, that was just something inspired by the play Hamilton. Yeah, that was my inspiration for that.
Beautiful. I love
Yeah.
that. I love that.
Love.
Did you include a picture of Polly? You
Oh, I
did.
did. There.
You did include a picture of Polly.
That's beautiful.
Oh
Well,
my
Polly was her
goodness.
nickname actually, so they just called her Paul.
So Polly was a real name.
No, it was like more of like a nickname, but like the real name was Paul.
So the nickname
Yeah.
was longer than the real name.
Yeah, basically.
Got it. Okay,
Yeah.
that makes
Paul
sense.
or
Yeah.
poll for election polls.
Oh,
you never
get
know.
out to
Register
vote,
to vote.
guys. Register to vote.
Make sure you
How many
register to
times
vote.
can we sneak that into this segment today?
We will see. We will certainly see. I'll tally. All right. Next slides. Number 1. Whose are these?
This is mine.
All right.
God.
Number 1, Warren G. Harding went to clown school. Number 2, Harry S. Truman doesn't actually have a middle name. And number 3, John Quincy Adams had a pet alligator.
Harry S. Truman. I don't think he had a middle name. That's
Here.
my guess.
Harry S. Truman, and I will explain my justification after.
Okay.
Okay.
I like your confidence, so I'm gonna ride on your train with number
Wait.
2 then.
Hold on. You could be trying to trip me up right now.
I think I heard the Harry S. Truman fact somewhere.
Okay, I'm going to go with Warren G. Harding, actually, and I will explain my justification after.
Warren G. Harding doesn't actually have.
Yeah. I'm allowed to switch up, right?
Yeah.
No. Just kidding.
Okay. All right, James.
Yes. So, the true.
I knew it.
Yep. There it is.
Yeah.
The S doesn't actually stand for any specific name. However, he does use it. It's not a fake thing entirely. I thought at first it was sort of a fake thing. He's like, all these other presidents have this initial in the middle, and he wanted to not feel left out or what. But it turns out that it's almost a compromise between 2 of his grandfather's names.
So can I explain why I switched?
Yeah.
Because I actually was about to put this fact when I was doing my research. I literally found this. But I thought you were trying to trip us up with semantics because S is actually on his birth certificate. So it's technically his middle name. It's just not a name.
Yes.
It's an initial. So a middle initial. So I got tripped up thinking you were trying to trip me up with the semantics. I'm going to give myself that point.
So it's,
That
on,
doesn't matter.
it's on his birth certificate.
It's
though.
on his birth
So
certificate.
if he was registering to vote, he would have to put S on there because
Yeah.
it's on his birth
Yes, he would.
certificate. Make sure you register to vote.
Don't put an S on
Nice.
yours
That's
unless you
number
need
3.
it.
Number 3.
All right, guys. Next slide. All right. Whose are these?
This is mine again.
All right. Perfect. Number 1, both presidential assassinations attempted by women were towards Gerald Ford.
Oh.
Number 2, the 7th president of the United States, Andrew Jackson, had 7 siblings. And number 3, President Dwight D. Eisenhower had a pet raccoon named Rebecca.
What do we think?
I know that a president had a pet raccoon named Rebecca, but was it Dwight Eisenhower?
I want to put it past him.
He might have.
I don't
I'm going to go with number 1.
I am too.
Gerald Ford.
I agree.
Just because I feel like the women folk weren't really rocking with him.
Yeah, I agree. I've looked at Gerald Ford. Not my type. I concur.
I'm gonna go with Dwight Eisenhower, Rebecca, pet raccoon.
I will split the vote, and I'll say that Andrew Jackson. Actually, guys, I don't really care.
So maybe I'll do the first one with Gerald Ford.
The truth is, number one is correct.
Nice.
Yep. So, President Ford was actually the victim of attempted murder less than 3 weeks apart. First by a member of the Charles Manson cult, a woman named Lynette Fromm, who believed that murdering Ford would appease Charles Manson. And the second was by Sarah Jane Moore, who fired a shot at Ford while he was at a convention. Both of these cases took place in California, and after that, Ford was given a bulletproof vest. I don't know why it took 2 assassination
After
attempts
the
to give him
first
the
one,
vest, but
you'd think.
Yeah.
Well,
Good job, guys.
Maybe the Secret Service didn't like him either.
I support women's
exactly.
rights and wrongs. All right, next slide. All right, number.
This is me again.
Okay, number 1, William Taft loved to eat possums and had a possum feast with over 600 people. The New York Times published a plea for the president to stop. Number 2, William Taft challenged visiting diplomats to staring contests, thinking it would help him gain the upper hand in international relations. And number 3, William Taft strongly believed in astrology. He even fired a chief of staff under the advice of his astrologer. This astrologer is rumored to have influenced some of his political decisions.
What a character.
That's amazing. All 3 of those are amazing.
Astrology girls are
I think
crazy.
Astrology Girl as a president is probably the best thing that I've heard in a long time. As someone that doesn't believe in astrology, I would have to vote for him. Make sure you register to vote. I would say that my pick here, though, is I'm going to go with possums. Even though I think it's wrong, I just love that pick. So I'm going to say that he ate a bunch of possums.
I'm gonna go with the staring contest. I don't know. There's just something so like America coded about challenging foreign diplomats to a staring contest to assert your dominance. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
That just gives bald eagle screech.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm in the same boat as Brandon. I really want the possum one to be correct. I have a feeling that Taft ate quite a bit, rest his soul. But he probably would have eaten possum.
Possum feast.
That's my understanding.
I like that.
I feel like the possums one would be a good trip up if it was a different animal, because it sounds too specific to be correct, so I wonder if it's a different animal. So I want to go with staring contests too.
All right, are we ready?
Yes.
So ready.
All right, next slide. It is the possum.
No way.
It is the possum. Now there is a little twist to this one. So it wasn't William Taft who challenged them to staring contests. It was Calvin Coolidge.
And
that
makes sense.
But wait till you hear about the astrology one. That is rumored to be about President Ronald Reagan. So his wife had an astrologer, and so the chief of staff, one of his chief of staffs, I believe his name was Donald Regan. He attributes his being fired to this astrologer. So it's rumored that this astrologer had like a lot of influence. She actually wrote a book. Her name is Joan Quigley. She wrote a book about it. So,
oh wow,
little fun fact. But yes, Taft possums. I couldn't find the exact screenshot of the New York Times begging him to stop eating possums, but that did happen.
That's insane.
I know his breath was hot.
That's terrible.
It was like alligators too. He was. There was a lot about Taft.
Taft
honestly.
was a freak.
I've eaten crocodile before actually, so maybe me and Taft are in the same boat.
Okay, and then last. I'm thinking this one's going to be our last one. All right,
These are mine.
All right, these are Brandon's. All right, number 1, Andrew Jackson had 3 live cows stay in the White House for 2 years. Number 2, Andrew Jackson proposed that a member of the cabinet be called the dairy chair in charge of all dairy farms. And number 3, Andrew Jackson had a 1,400-pound wheel of cheese delivered to the White House.
I love that all of them are dairy related.
Yeah, these
dairy
are
dairy-themed history.
Yes.
Yeah.
He was not lactose intolerant. That we can.
Certainly
Maybe
not.
he was. Lactose intolerant people.
Well,
thinking about my roommate.
What do you guys think?
This is stumping me.
I think he had the dairy chair. I feel like he had the dairy chair because it just seems like a professional title. If I didn't know anything about politics, if I didn't know anything about the way our government worked, and you told me that the FDA had a dairy chair in charge of the dairy, I would believe you. If I didn't know what I know about politics and the government. If I was a 4th grader, I would believe you.
I'm going with the 3 live cows because when you have a house as big as the White House, you're gonna put anything in there. I would put something like a live cow in there. I don't know what yet, but
I think it's the cows as well, actually. I have a feeling that I mean, similarly, he probably was just exercising his freedom to just do whatever he wanted in that house. So, yeah.
I want to go with dairy chair. I kind of agree with you, Shay.
Oh man, 0 for 4, guys. Wow. It is actually the 1,400-pound wheel of cheese. And this is one of my favorite stories I think I've ever read. So he got it from a New York dairy farmer, just as like a gift. The craziest thing about this to me is that this isn't the first time a half-ton pound of cheese has been in the White House. It had actually happened before, and that's besides the point, but it happened to Thomas Jefferson, if you were wondering. And the people basically had said that they believed that everything Jackson was getting, everything Jefferson got, they were like, Jackson deserves this and more, because they thought Jackson was just that amazing, even though he was a freak, as we established. But it happened in 1837 after a party. It was the last party that Jackson threw in the White House. It was on George Washington's birthday, which in early America was a big celebration. And basically, it had sat in the White House for a year. They had it since 1836. It was air-aged cheese, 1,400 pounds of it, 4 feet wide, 2 feet tall. It would take up this entire part of the desk here. And they ate all of it in 2 hours at the party.
My gosh.
And there was a room, like you said, using the White House's size to your advantage, there was a room that was designated as the cheese room that they held cheese in for that entire year. And it stank so bad that our good friend, the next president, our Dutch friend, Martin Van Buren, he had to literally deconstruct the entire room and reconstruct it to get it to stop reeking of cheese.
That is so unsettling, and I think that is going to be the wrap in all the presidential gossip that I can handle right now. So let's save some for the election season. With a point total of 5, please congratulate Brandon, our human lie detector, with me. We will see you next time on the History Panel. Back to you, Lauren.
Thanks, Audrey. Sadly, that is all the time we have for you today. In the meantime, stay updated with ATD on all socials and let us know what you want to see us cover next. I am Lauren Perry, and we will see you back at the desk next week.